Hi, welcome to Open at Microsoft. Today we're talking to Moaid Hathot, and we're going to learn all about Dumpify. All right, Moaid, can you tell me all about Dumpify?
Sure. So Dumpify is an open source library. You can find it at GitHub. Basically, it adds a few extension methods. Starts with dump, which given any object, it can show that object on the screen or in any stream in a structured and colorful way. So
Okay.
basically, imagine you have an object that you want to print either to screen or maybe to log it. And once you do that, you notice that that object did not implement to string. So here you have two options. You either go and override the toString method, which isn't always ideal or possible because maybe that object is from an external library, or
Mhm.
maybe that you don't want to change the implementation of toString just because of your current scenario. Um, and the other option is trying to do some string interpolation magic, which is also not great. You have to do that for every object. So
Mhm.
Dumpify is here in order to make it for you. You can take any object, any dot object, and just output it as a structured and colorful way.
That sounds really helpful. I mean, everyone knows that a lot of debugging, a lot of time is console write line, or
Yeah.
what you're doing reminds me a bit of in the browser, like console.table. Like, I don't want to have to format a bunch of, I'm writing a complex object out. I want to see the whole object. So that sounds really useful.
Yeah, it's really similar to that, although I do add a lot of customization that you can do so that it will be like nicer than just a table.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see it.
Yeah, so let me just share my screen. So I do. So here I have two objects that I'm created from type person. Let's leave it as a class.
Mhm.
And let's say I want to write the first object to the console. So I can do console write line. And once I go and try to run it, and we say that we don't have anything except the type name, which
Yeah.
is a bummer. So yeah, so let's try and use Dumpify. So first of all, it's a NuGet that we can download from here, and we can
Okay.
install it in different ways. For example, we can just use the CLI and do .NET add package Dumpify. I already did that. Or we
Mhm.
can use Visual Studio. It's up to you. But once we do that, we get an extension method called dump. So let's do the dump. And we do have to add the using. So just added the using here. And now if I'm gonna run it again, what we'll get is this table. So on the left, we have the properties name, and on the right, we have the values. So this is
Nice. Yeah.
the yeah. So this is the simplest example that I can show you. But we can go further than that. So for example, it supports arrays and any type of collection. So let's try and do an example. So this is an enumerable, and we can do one with arrays because it does render each one a bit differently. Um, so we can see that it not only writes the values, but it does handle each type in a different way. So this is an enumerable. It's a generic or common, or
Mhm.
actually it is like anonymous type. Like we're not really aware that it's a range iterator type. We are using the interface, so we just write the values
Okay.
here. Because this is an array, we can write the type, we can write the length, and we do have the indices here on the
Yeah.
left. So it's more convenient, and can also like work with list or any kind of collection. So we can either do that for dictionary, and dictionary it's handled a bit differently. So let's see an example. Let's say that we have string to int, and here we have like 1 equal 1, and here we have 2 equal 2, for example. And what it doesn't like here, new dictionary.
Dictionary spelled wrong.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's check again. And we can see here that it has also it writes the keys and values.
Yeah.
And what's cool about that is that it also can support nested objects. So let's do more complex stuff. We do have here like 2 persons. Mm-hmm. And let's say that a person also has a family. So we can add it public person family. And we can keep it for now as, okay, so we can keep it, let's do it here. Okay, so it's nullable, and we can also add the console write line just for comparison. Mm-hmm. So currently it's pressing null. So let's add it. So let's add value to that. Okay. So what we can do here is we can say that Moaid family equals to an array that has Hanini, and we can now print it. And we can see, so it has an array and the object. But what's more cool is that, let's say that maybe like Moaid is Hanini is a family of Moaid, so it's also vice versa, right? So we can Hanini family equals Moaid, and what we do have here is a circular dependency,
right?
So let's see what we'll have if we try to run it, and it knows. So let's see. So we have the big object, which is Moaid. Mm-hmm. It has a family, which is an array. The second item of the array is a type person, which is Hanin, and then it has array as a family, and it noticed that Moaid is a object that we already rendered, so it won't do it again. Otherwise, we will like have a recursion.
Right. Wow. So you've got extension methods on. I'm seeing on class. What all sort of, and then you also showed with like arrays and lists. Are there certain things that it doesn't support?
No, virtually it should support any managed .NET object. If we have object that has some unmanaged fields or properties, so it won't render that properties or field, but any .NET object, it should manage it. What it does behind the scene is try to build some sort of a schema of each object using reflection. The schema is cached, so if you do log the same object multiple times, it won't recreate the schema. And once you want to render an actual object, it won't run on the object again. It will take the schema of that object and it will render it using the schema. So any property or field that you can get from within reflection, it supports that.
So you mentioned that it's configurable. What are some of the main configuration options that I would use?
Okay, so let's see a few. So for example, in this example, I'm showing public properties. Let's see an example where we have, for example, fields. So I'm just pasting here some class. It's a class that has 2 fields, private fields, and also a private property, but it has 2 fields. And let's try and create an object of that class and print it. So new addition value, and if we'll try to see the result as is, we shouldn't see anything because all of them are private fields or properties, but we can change it. So what we can say, we have two options. We can either set configuration globally, or we can do that per each call to dump. So here I can say members. We do have a lot of optional parameters. So members is one of them. We can say new members config, and then I can specify includes fields and includes non-public members. And once I do that, if I try to run the same code again, oops, I have something that's not compiling in here. What did it say? Members. Okay, it's members.
Yeah.
So if I try to run the same code again, we'll see that this time it did provided the private fields. So this is one configurable option. We do have many, but another one, it's like, let's say that currently it does not show the type of the properties. We can make it show the type of the properties. So let's try to do that, but this time let's do that using the global API. So instead of specifying it per dump, I can use it globally. So for example, dump config default. It's part of table config. I can show member types. So it will show the types of the members. And what I can do as well is show row separators. And if I run it again, we can see that it's showing the type of each member, and also the table separator. And like I do have a lot of more customization. For example, I can change the colors of everything, of type names, values. I can specify what something called a label. So let's say that I want to dump two objects like the same. They are of the same type. So what I can do here is add a string, which is explaining what this object is. So, and if I'm going to run it again, we can see that this time here I do have this label called Hadini, and above I had a label called Moaid, and there's a really awesome feature that was contributed by the community, which is using auto labels. It's using a feature of C# where it can figure out itself the expression that the function was invoked on. So what I can do here is that, let me do something like that. It's called use auto labels. So I just copy configuration here. And if I'm going to copy any object, maybe I can do that. For example, enumerable range dump. Let me just delete. Okay. If I'm going to run it again, then we can see that the label was figured out automatically. So
okay.
Yeah. So an object that you want to print, it will also see the label.
So you mentioned that was contributed by community. It seems like a good time to show off the repo.
So this is the repo. It's called Dumpify. By the way, everything that I explained, you can see here in the examples below, is also code samples. And we do have a few issues that are currently opened. We have issues that were already closed, either by contribution made by me or by the community. And if anybody wants to contribute, then I will be glad to help. We do have here below a list of features that I'm currently working on or want to implement. So here we have a list of features for the next version. And here we have like a generic to-do for future versions as well.
That's great. So it's a good time to mention you're a Microsoft employee, but this is a personal project you're building on your own time. So help is appreciated, right?
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's great. Well, I mean, this is one of those things that's right when I see it, it's immediately obvious. And now I'm wanting to use it in every project. So that's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And one last thing, there's also one feature that wasn't contributed by the community, but the idea came from the community, is that instead of writing each time to the console, to write to different streams, and we can do that for the debug of Visual Studio or the trace of Visual Studio, or we can specify our own output stream or string writer. So, so if you are working with Visual Studio or maybe with unit test and you want to see stuff in the output window or maybe in the trace window, then you can just use dump trace or dump debug and it will work for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this seems like, debugging is a great thing. But as you mentioned, tests, like viewing test output, this seems really useful there.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is great. Well, thank you so much for showing it off to me.
Okay. Sure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.